Welcome back to Five Questions with. I'm your host, Dustin Pede. I am so very excited to continue this interview series with an amazing friend of mine in Indianapolis. If you've watched this at all, or if you've read any of my bio stuff before, you know that I spent a good deal of time early on in my career in central Indiana. Got to meet some really incredible people. So if you're noticing a trend where like there's a lot of Indiana people on his show, it's because they just don't grow them like they do in Indiana anywhere else. And Darren Cooper is my guest today, and he's one of them. Darren is one of the people that were kind of with me and in my like network of creative friends when I was just getting into discovering what creativity was and what it meant to me. And I think
Mhm.
Darren was on that journey too. And so he was doing so
Sure.
many cool things like owning his own recording studio and writing original music and doing like songwriter and the songwriter nights and all these amazing things. And he would have a band and he would release an album. And like, I remember going to see his album release show that he did when I lived there, and everything Darren touches is just gold. And so I'm so pumped to share him with you, the listeners and watchers of Five Questions with this week. So let me just give you
Yeah.
the official formal Darren Cooper intro. He's the lead creator and founder now of 1898 Creative, which I got to hear the story behind that name, which is not one of
For
my five
sure.
questions. Anyway,
For sure.
1898 Creative is a content strategy and video production company that's on mission to help purpose-driven businesses tell their story and grow their business with video. Man, even just reading that gets me so psyched for what Darren's doing these days. Because I just know Darren's touch. It's like Midas. It's just going to be gold. Darren, welcome to the show. First of all,
Dude, so glad to be here. And after that introduction, I better bring the heat today,
you
you
better
know?
bring the heat. I'm telling you. Tell us quickly about 1898 Creative. What does that mean? Where the name come from? How did that whole thing evolve?
Yeah, so funny story. So long story short, I've been a part of a family-owned business for a long time. So my dad started a nonprofit organization that was in the housing industry that dedicated 50% of the dollars each year to go out to missions work, right?
Yeah, I love that.
And my brother came along a few years into that and is picking up the mantle for my dad, but also is starting the mission side of things. And
Hmm.
he titled that company The Stone Table, right?
Yeah,
After the great C.S. Lewis and the Chronicles of Narnia and all that, right? So, inside of all of this, this business is kind of tucked underneath the stone table. So it's a business that I
okay,
created, but it's tucked underneath the stone table. They're a parent company, if you will, right?
yeah,
Sounds super fancy and awesome. It's just the way that it worked best for all the tax purposes and all the things, right?
yeah,
But as I was sitting there thinking of a name, you're going Darren Cooper Creative.com or, something very
yeah.
basic and name driven.
Yeah, like mine.
But I was yeah, like DustinP.com. I mean, gosh, how creative. No, no, no.
I love it.
I wanted it to be a company and not just a brand of
Yeah,
mine because I was doing some music stuff under my name, and so
right.
I needed something different. And so, in that idea of, I was like, man, a C.S. Lewis name would be cool, right?
Ooh, yeah,
Something C.S. Lewis driven,
yeah,
and I wasn't sure what to do. Like you're going through Narnia and it's all these weird names, and I'm like, I'm not calling it anything like these. Like,
yeah,
it's good, but slightly odd all at the same time.
yeah. Mr.
And
Tumnus,
so
creative.
I look right. So that's dang it. I actually should have taken that. That's pretty quick.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, so I thought I go, man, what year was C.S. Lewis born? And it's
Mhm.
actually in 1898.
Oh,
And
yes.
so I thought 1898 creative is pretty good, especially for a creative agency. There's not a lot of people any more creative than C.S. Lewis himself. And
Yeah,
so it
absolutely
just
right.
fit the bill of, fitting a C.S. Lewis theme with also being very purpose and driven towards a creative bent, which
Yeah,
what I was trying to do. So
yeah.
the story behind the name, if you will. So
I love it, dude. I knew there's gonna be a good story. Yeah, I remember hanging out and doing a few things with your brother Eric.
Hmm.
and the Stone Table is just a really
Yeah.
amazing ministry. Y'all should definitely check them out. Let's
Yes.
jump right into these 5 questions. So we're going to talk to you about
Do it.
creativity today because again, you and I kind of trying to figure out creativity and what it meant to us
Yeah.
in the adult
Yeah.
world at the same
For
time,
sure.
and things that we were going
Yeah.
through. And so I always loved and appreciated our coffees togethers, where we would just sit and
Mm-hmm.
just dish on creativity and what we were learning and who we were
Yeah.
being challenged by. So my first question to
Yeah.
you is one that
Love
I
it.
get often, and I would love for you to address this. Who can be
Hmm.
creative?
Who can be creative? All right. Well, this is my thoughts on who can be creative. And maybe I'll answer your question with a question.
Of course.
But Dustin, do you have a teacher or somebody that comes to mind when I say an educator or somebody in your life from growing up? Maybe you can tell me their name that had a huge impact on you.
100%. Mr. Warnock, one of my band teachers in high school.
Mr. Mr. Warnock, he's a band
Warnock.
teacher, right?
Yep.
Mr. Warnock, in my opinion, is a creative person, right?
Mm.
And now he's in music, so it might be easy to say that, right? But I
Yeah.
think all of us have a teacher or somebody that's in our life that had a profound impact on us in a way that we still remember to this day. I can tell you probably a couple of teachers that come to mind for myself. But the reason that I say or answer your question with this is because a creative person is somebody that inspires, that encourages, that challenges, that motivates, that moves you in a way uh, to maybe change, to maybe see life differently, to maybe expect something that you didn't expect, right?
Mm.
And so the reason that I ask you about your teacher is because I think that he is a creative person and literally changes you and challenges you and encourages you and makes you a better person. And nobody might say, "Oh, a teacher is a creative, job to experience," right? But I would say that they are creative because they will come up with ways to inspire you. They will come up with ways to encourage you. They will come up with ways to broaden your horizons and give you language to something that maybe you didn't have. And in that moment, I think that teacher that you grew up with, or that had a profound impact on you, is creative. In the
Yeah.
same way that I will say the accountant that can learn how to put together spreadsheets that makes our lives a little bit easier, a little bit more able to be understood, can take these complex ideas and make them simple and hand them to me, that they're actually creative as well. So the answer to that question, or at least in my mind when you say that, is I think everybody's a creative person. I think
Yeah.
everybody is an artist. And the thing that you have to do is what you alluded to earlier, what we were trying to do in that those coffees and those circles of talking about art and creativity and all that, is you got to get in there and you got to mix it up and you got to see where that spark of your life is.
Yeah.
And maybe you are a teacher, and maybe you are an accountant, and maybe you are a fill in the blank, right? A mechanic that fixes my car. My God, you are the most creative people that I know, because you know who can't fix a car? Me. I don't know anything about nothing when it comes to all of that, but you can get in there and you can make things and move things and get things to work in ways that I can't. I believe that you are an artist in those jobs as well. But
Yeah.
the hard part is that we normally don't put creative on that, right?
Mm.
We don't say you're a creative person because you're good at, fixing cars or teaching students,
Yeah.
or right. And so for me, I think everybody is creative and they just have to do the work of being able to get to a place where they go, you know what? I can create within these skills and these giftings that I have in
Yeah.
front of me.
Yeah, man, that's so good. I 100% agree. I just love hearing that's pretty much the same answer that any seasoned or mature creative person I know gives me when I
Right.
ask that question. But every time someone
Right.
answers it, there's a little bit different flair, a little bit different seasoning in there,
Yeah.
and I know it's going to
Yeah.
hit somebody else differently than what maybe someone else answered it. Let's jump to the second
Yeah.
question.
For sure. Yeah. Hit me with it.
What's one big concept that you see most creative people miss?
The big thing that I see most creative people miss, um, is that, let's see how I'd word this really is, the big miss that most creatives have is that they think that they need to wait for inspiration before they
Yes.
create.
Yeah.
I think the big thing for us, and something I've been subject to more often than not, is just this idea that the muse has to hit me in order for it to be something,
Mm,
you know?
yeah.
As a songwriter, you gotta sit down and you gotta write, like, the only
Yeah.
way you find inspiration is by putting pen to paper.
Yeah.
I think, and I know that might be an easy thing to say. If you are a seasoned creative, you might be like, "Yeah, I know that," right? But for those of
Mm,
you who are dabbling, or those of you trying to figure it out, or those of you who might not have been creating for very long, or even been comfortable calling yourself a creative, because sometimes
mhm.
that's the hard part, is just being able to say I'm a creative person out loud.
Right.
Um, for you, maybe you just need to hear what most early to the creative game people happen, is that they go, well, I'm just waiting for inspiration to hit. And
Yeah.
really what it comes is, you gotta set up, and you gotta show up, and through that, beautiful things happen.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, that's the big thing that a lot of us creatives miss, is that we don't work unless we feel like working, and
Yeah.
that's not a good way of approaching it.
Yeah, man, that's so good. That's exactly what me and some other friends of mine right now have been discovering. And you're probably like the 12th person to bring this up over and over again. Is that we have to, which means that we should be listening more, I think. Is
Yeah.
that we don't sit around and wait for inspiration, but we go seek it out. I'm gonna skip a question and come back to it only because we're talking about inspiration right now. So I would
Hmm.
love to know. This is like where we get a little bit even more practical.
Yeah.
I love one of my favorite things to talk to other creative people about is where are you finding your inspiration at currently? So
Hmm.
that's my third question for you today is where do you go to look for inspiration for what you do?
Yeah. Right now, where I'm finding the most inspiration, because I've been doing video for a handful of years now.
Yeah.
Um, but right now, where I'm getting most of my inspiration is simply YouTube. Like,
Yeah.
what are the other artists doing? What are the extremely creative type YouTube channels doing, right? How are they approaching their storytelling? What are they bringing in? What does their B-roll look like? What do their lower thirds look like? What are their quote graphics look like? All the way to what's, Gary V doing on his business
Yeah.
channel, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, he's doing it this way. And and so I'm finding so much inspiration from looking at what other, video people are doing. And
Yeah.
so YouTube's a big inspiration for me. In my music side of life, a lot of my inspiration just comes from just listening to anything and everything I can get my hands on, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
live in the Spotify world. Every Friday, there is new music everywhere. So it's like, what is the newest New Music Friday playlist? And not just the one they create for me that sounds really cool and all the music that I like, but also the stuff that's branching out and challenging me, giving me new ideas and inspiration beyond. So those are the two big ones right now that I'm finding.
Yeah, follow-up question to that one. This does not count,
Hmm.
as part of my thought. What are a few of the regular YouTube channels that you're going to? Do you have a couple of regular feeds, or are you just shuffling it up?
I'm shuffling it up. Now that you ask me that, I say that I shuffle it up, but maybe it is just more of the same stuff. But a lot of the ones that I'm finding, um, really cool, and I'm looking at my app here. I'm not,
Yeah, go for it.
texting or posting on social media, but, let's see. Yeah, a lot of the guys I like, I'm getting huge inspiration. If you are in any type of media, doing YouTube videos, creating any video for a church or for a business in any way, Think Media is an amazing organization. So much good information out there that they are delivering. They have different presenters, so it's not just like one guy that's giving you his perspective every time. I mean, there are
Yeah.
anything from reviews to best strategies on YouTube for 23, all that kind of stuff.
Mm,
Amazing, amazing YouTube channel there.
love it.
Um, if you're into music at all and you're trying to build a business with it, if you are looking to be inspired, figuring out ways, tips, tricks, if you're getting into Facebook ads or anything like that, Full Stack Creative, Full Stack, like a full stack of paper.
Mhm.
Full Stack Creative is an amazing YouTube channel, all about music. Caveat: there is some language sometimes, so if that's not your thing, just be
Okay.
aware. um, and so those are 2 that are in like, my creative space, but then I watch channels like if you've heard of Big Think. Big Think is a YouTube channel. They
Yeah.
have all kinds of different topics. They're talking about science things, they're talking about this, but I tend to watch them for their storytelling. I tend to watch them for their video production, how they're putting stuff together, and then there's some
Yeah.
really cool information along the way. Those are 3 that I tend to hit, pretty regularly, as
Yeah.
far as maybe you might even say I've rung the bell for them, so I get notified when,
Yeah. Gotta
like you
ring the
should
bell.
do for Dustin's videos. You should subscribe right now. You should ring the bell wherever you're watching this. Make sure you ring the bell, and that's a
It's
way
true.
to do it. So, yeah,
That's true. Thank you. No, I don't have to do that at the end of the video.
there you
Um,
go.
hey, last 2 questions for you. I wanna be, cautious of your time that you sharing with
Yeah,
us.
man.
So here's a how question. A lot of people are sitting out there and they're going to start creating and they're going to start getting their feet wet in something that they're starting to feel pretty passionate about. How does
Mhm.
someone know if what they've created is any good or not?
That's a great question, Dustin. That's a great question, and I'm I want to be able to say, um, that the market or your audience or the people will tell you if it's good or not. That's kind of an easy cop out answer, right? Like,
Sure. Yeah.
show it to somebody and see what they think. It's
Yeah.
like the classic: if you build it, they will come.
Right.
And that actually goes back to your question that most creatives miss. I think a lot of things that to piggyback off of that before I move on is a lot of creatives miss the idea of if I build it, they'll come, and
Mm,
they think that only if my art is will stand for itself, and I'm going to build an audience just because this piece of music or this design or this art piece, just because I make it and it's good, people will show up.
wow.
And that's a big miss us creatives have, is that there is a marketing side of it. There's more than just creating. We have to tell people about it too. And so I think when it does come to, if you know if your art is good or not, is if you keep creating. I'm going to take this
Mm,
angle here. And what I mean by that is you'll know if it's good or not because you'll keep creating more of it. And by each time you create, you will get better and better. The idea that I have when you ask me this question, Dustin, is that
yeah.
I I thought 10 years ago the song I wrote was really good.
Mm,
And I'll even say others thought the song was really good too, in the sense that people listened to it and it was enjoyed and put on other records, and people, sang it in their church or whatnot, right? So you could say it was a good piece of art that I made, right? But 10 years later, I look at it and I'm like, it's not that's not the greatest thing. Yeah, I could have tweaked that, could have done that differently, could have,
Right. Constantly
so
edit.
the right, the question begs is, what was it a good piece of art to begin with if I think differently later?
Yeah.
And I think the answer is yes, it was still a good piece of art. And so to really answer your question, I think one, you can't be the judge and jury of your art.
Mm.
You have to be the producer, and then you have to do everything in your power to get it in front of people and then allow them to judge if it's a good piece of art or not. But as the artist or as the creative, I think it really boils down to the only way that you know is to create the next piece of art. So it is letting go of what you created here, moving on to the next piece, and continuing to put the chain together of more and more and more and more. I think that's the only way that we're gonna know if it's any good, because you might experience, Dustin, you might experience, say it's a song that I've written, and the lyric and the melody do something inside of you, and you're like, "Man," and you play it for your friend, and they're like, "Hey, that's cool," you know? They don't have the same response
Right.
necessarily that you did, and that doesn't mean that it's a good or great piece of art. It just means that it is what it is. And so I think for me, as an artist, we just have to keep creating. That's the only way that we are going to know if any of our art is good, is to give
Mm.
people enough of an opportunity to experience it, all while we are growing and maturing in our craft, right?
Yeah.
We have to keep up. So if somebody's asking you that question, or if you're asking yourself that question, is what I'm doing any good? What I would
Yeah.
encourage you to do is to drop that a little bit. Let that weight of, is what I'm doing any good? Allow that to fall to the wayside and go, how can I create another piece of art today? I'm going to
Mm.
be better today than I was yesterday. I'm going to be better tomorrow than I was today. And the only way to literally have a body of work that is, seen or heard or embodied by other people, is if they have more than just, here's a piece of art 1 month, and then 12 months later here's another one, and then 6 weeks later here's, it is a little bit of consistency. It's also a little bit of just, you got to keep creating. You
Yeah.
got to. So
Man.
that's, I took a lot of roads in there, but we got
Oh,
around to where we needed to be eventually, right? So
no, man, it's so good. I think everybody now understands why coffee with you was such a treat for me for so long while we used to hang out. I love it's almost as if you have looked at the questions before we went live
no,
today.
no, I have
I
not.
know
This is,
because
you're firing them off right at me, man. I'm just off the top of my
because
head.
you said something in there, which is my final question of today, and it's
Oh
probably the
yes.
most practical of all. But what's
Yeah.
one thing that I can do today to be more creative than I was yesterday?
All right. It's a secret.
Lean
It's
in, everybody.
it's a very big secret. I'm gonna look directly
I
in the
have my pen.
camera on
I'm
this
ready to
one.
go.
I'm
Go
gonna
for it.
tell you. So phrase the question again. So I phrase it the way that you say it. Say the question
What's the one thing I can do today to be more creative than I was
today.
yesterday?
So if you want to do something today that will help you be more creative tomorrow, is that you have to create something today.
Yeah, that's it.
You have to create something today. I know it's so profound. Your mind is blown. You're like, Darren, that is worth the weight of gold. Come on, let's go. No, but literally, the
Telling you.
only way
You're right.
that you can make sure that you are more creative tomorrow than you are today is you have to create something. It
You're so
has
right.
to, like, if you are a musician, what song have you written today? Even if it's a
Mm,
chord progression, what have you
mm,
put together? If you are a writer, what have you written? Have a goal of 100 words or 200 or 500 words today, because the only way that you get to be able to be better tomorrow is if you do it today.
yeah,
That's it.
man, you're stepping on toes now. I love it.
I
I love
know.
it.
I'm sorry for the offense that I have
No, you're
caused
great.
in your life, but no, man. I and the reason that I get so passionate about that, man, is because I spent years of my life waiting for the perfect moment to create. I still struggle with it today, right? I think we were talking earlier about, oh, I'm going to do a YouTube channel, and I'm like, hey, well, I don't know, what I'm going to talk about and like all the things, and like I have 1,000 excuses. I have a
Yeah, we
thousand
all do.
excuses. But the only way that I get to a YouTube channel that has 1,000 subscribers, 10,000 subscribers, 1,000,000 subscribers is I show up today and I create something and I post it out there in the world. That's the only
Mm,
way. And the fact that
so true.
I can come up with so many excuses to not do it, it it literally that's what is standing between me and success. So the practical answer to that question is just that you have to create something today.
Yeah.
And
It's the
it's also
simplest answer.
the simplest and the hardest answer all at the same time
Mhm.
because all of us are the same way. I get it that it's easy for me to spitball on this video here and say, oh, just create something. But I could hang up right now, close the computer, and pull out something to create, and I would be just as paralyzed as you and everybody else that's listening to this, right?
Yeah.
So
Like,
I
"Ah,
get
I'll
it.
eat something first, and then I'll come back and create." And then
Yeah,
you come back and create, and I'm like, "Ah, I'll take a little nap
yeah.
first."
You know what sounds good is some chicken wings, like, but now I
Can't
gotta go to the
I can't
store,
create on an
and
empty
it's
stomach.
yeah, now it's 3 days
Yeah,
later and you haven't done the work. So, I
so
know
right.
that all of us, I think I've heard this new idea, floating around, and it's probably not a new idea. New to me is what I'm gonna say, is this idea of the flinch. Have you heard of this? Where it's like
Oh, lay it
people
on
are
me.
are people are telling you to take cold showers in the morning,
Mm,
and I'm like,
yep,
first of all, that to me, no way.
that's what
I'm
crazy people
a
do.
I know, I'm a boiling hot water kinda guy, but
Mm,
what they say is when you step in and then you turn the water on and it's freezing cold, right, you're gonna have a moment before you turn the water on where you flinch because
yep,
you know it's gonna be hard, right?
yep,
And oh, and we all have that moment, right?
yep,
When we sit down to create something, we we have that moment, we flinch. And
mhm,
so it's this whole idea of the flinch, and I need to do even a little bit more research so I can really like expound on the idea. But it really caught me because I know every time I sit down to edit a video or to put a piece of music together, I feel the flinch because it's
yep,
like, and sometimes the flinch doesn't start until maybe I've just started to get to work, right? You just
yeah,
start the video edit, right? You're in it, you're like, oh man, maybe I could do this. Now all of a sudden you do have that, but maybe I should eat some lunch first before I,
hmm,
keep going on
yeah,
this because it's like when you hit that brick wall of not knowing what the next step is,
yep,
sometimes that's where the flinch kicks in and you bounce and you're out. And
yep,
so, as artists, as creatives, as people that are trying to make something and present it in the world, how can we come up to that moment of the flinch and get through it?
mhm,
And I don't know how I'm doing it yet. I don't have 3 steps to get through the flinch. Once I
yeah,
do, I'll create that video and post it for you. But
yeah, let's have you back on when
all
you figure that out.
right, right, right. Once I figured it out, but for all of us, I think we all have to say, how can I get through that flinch? Or just to simply be aware that the flinch exists, right?
Mhm,
Because now that we know that the flinch exists, we can recognize it when it happens and we can move through it. And maybe I'm learning as I talk out loud here. Maybe that's how I have to get through it, is to realize that the flinch is there. It's going to happen. Oh, I don't want to do that. Oh, nope, I can, and then I'll turn
yeah,
on the cold water and freeze myself to death.
yeah,
But
don't let the
that's
flinch stop you. Expect the flinch so that you
mhm.
can work through the
Yeah,
flinch
yeah.
and
The
actually
flinch
create the
doesn't
thing.
mean yeah, flinch doesn't mean that you're not good at what you do,
I love it.
because even the best artists will flinch,
Yep,
but it's how you get through it, how you move past it, that's where the beauty is gonna be held on. So,
so good,
yeah.
man.
Yeah, yeah.
That's so good. I could talk to you for hours about creativity, but I wanna let
Love it.
people know where they can find more about what you're doing. You
Sure.
can see more about Darren and his company at 1898creative.com. Tell
That's
everybody
right.
how wicked cool that name is. And go check out what they're doing. Stay tuned for all the
Uh,
YouTube videos on the flinchings. And
yes.
dude, it's gonna be so good. I cannot wait.
Got to do it. Got
Cannot
to do
wait.
it.
So yeah, 1898creative.com is where you can find that. Darren, thanks so much for your time today. It is always incredibly refreshing and challenging every time we have these
Yeah.
conversations. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
doing that.
Man, anytime, anytime, Dustin. Love what you're doing, love what you're about, and so can't wait to see where your YouTube channel goes from a
Yeah,
thousand
we'll
to
see.
10,000 to a million. We get there, we get there. So
Yeah, we'll see. So, like Darren said earlier, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel right where you're
yes,
watching this,
hit
and
that
ring
bell right
ring the
now,
bell,
ring it.
ring the bell, ring the bell, subscribe, and man, I cannot wait to share with you many more of these discussions on 5 questions. Until next time, we'll see you then.